Welcome to the front row. I'm your host, Brad Rowe, and this is a space where unfiltered stories of the human condition get told. Pull up a chair. How's it going, guys? And welcome to another episode of the front row, unfiltered stories of the human condition. I am here with Brandon McNaughton. Brandon actually is a hometown guy. He went to my same high school. He's about 4 years behind me, 4 or 5 years behind me. And we connected about 6 months ago.
That's right.
Maybe. Yeah. Brandon has been through quite a journey in life, and he is here to share his story and share the things he went through. We actually just wrapped up. He flew out to Montana to join one of my Foundry intensives. So he's coming off 3 days of some intense physical work, some emotional and spiritual work. And so I think he's in a prime place to share his story. Brandon, thank you very much for joining.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. It was a pleasure. Oh man. I mean, you've been through it all. You know, we'll give a little synopsis. I mean, this man has been through abandonment, been through major drugs, has seen way too many people that are young and important in his life pass away. And it's been quite a journey to get you to where you are today and to a place of peace. So
Yes.
why don't we start out with where everything starts with childhood?
Well, I come from a pretty good family with my mother and father met in New York, and they tried to have children for years. In vitro came along, had my brother, and shortly thereafter they were going for another one and ended up with 3 triplets in vitro, me and 2 sisters.
Okay.
Growing up, shortly at 3 years old, my mother and father got divorced. I really don't remember that much, but growing up with my mother, my mother loved me. I knew that my father loved me. I knew that there was something between my mother and father that was never explained to me. There was an uneasiness between my mother and father, and I only understood it from what I could feel was an anger or frustration towards my father. And, my father was generally not the happiest of men. He had me when he was 45, and, my grandmother was in labor while Hitler was bombing London, and my dad immigrated from England to America. And he comes from a broken home, never had a real father figure in his life, so he wasn't a strong male role model in my life. And my mother also comes from another broken home and her own trauma to deal with. But overall, I feel she did the best she could.
Yeah.
Raising us 4 kids. And, my dad was there on the weekends. And overall, I grew up with love. And, my mother showed me love. It came to a point where my grandfather had passed away and he was living with us. He was a decorated Army lieutenant colonel in World War II in Korea.
Yeah.
He passed away in the house, and my mother wanted to downsize the house. So she wanted me to go live with my father. And one morning she told me that I was going to live with my father. And I remember walking to the bus stop in 6th grade, and in 6th grade, I had went from, just a carefree child, from liking bugs and being outdoors and hanging out with my friends, to now being faced with moving to my father's house, away from my sisters, away from my older brother, just being separated. So I was walking to the bus stop, and I was 10 or 11 and I saw a Mack truck go by and I ran back and told my mom that I thought I was going to throw myself in front of that Mack truck to postpone or delay or maybe even stop her from moving me into my father's house. And, she took that suicide threat as very serious and sent me to a mental hospital, a psychiatric ward.
In sixth grade.
In sixth grade. And there, I was angry. I was frustrated. I remember they sent me into a room with padded walls and one little window. And, there were other children there and, from obviously other families that, weren't so well off. There was a kid in there who had a full-grown mustache at like 12 and smoked cigarettes. And I did not identify or feel like I belonged there.
Right.
But it started from there. A lot of self-esteem, self-worth issues that manifested in so many different ways throughout my life.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I can't imagine like the abandonment feeling of that question of like, why would she just give you up? Why wouldn't it be like your older brother who, separating you from your triplet sisters and everything else, and being at a younger age, you would think that your mom would want to keep that together.
I had so many of those questions myself. And up until a few years ago, actually really doing a lot of work around it, and seeing her perspective of, how she had to make that difficult choice. And, it took me years to process that and accept and find forgiveness for her that, she did the best she could and accept that, she did the best she could and that, that's a very difficult decision on her. And as much as it hurt me, it hurt her.
Right. Has she ever given you an explanation? Have you ever even asked for?
I have.
Yeah.
During that time in sixth grade, I cared less about school. I was moved into a special ed program, and coded emotional. When I asked my mother's friend who was around a lot when we were growing up, she had told me that I was just an angry, well, I was a happy, but I would get these bursts of anger. And she says it might have been all the female energy around because my father wasn't really in the picture and no strong male role model to look up to see how I should act or how I should carry myself and how to deal with emotional regulation.
Sixth grade, so you're
Sixth grade.
You leave the mental institute.
Yeah.
Been with your dad. Point.
Moving to my father's house, he's accommodating. He tried so hard to build the connection, but at that point I was just so angry and frustrated with and lost and feeling abandoned, alone and scared and just wanting love. But at this point I was directionless. My father drove, or he would let me drive his beat up station wagon to the next town over where I moved from to finish out that sixth grade year. And I didn't want to go, coming from the rival football school, I had so many fears about what was going to happen when I moved there. And
yeah. For context, he went to Exeter High School and I went to Winnicott High School, and it's actually one of the oldest rivalries in New Hampshire and across the country. So it is a deep rivalry. So to have to go from Exeter Bluehawks to Winnicott or Hampton, It's a shock, especially at that age, at that very vulnerable age of, 7th grade,
Yeah.
13 years old.
Yeah. 12. I remember 6th grade year was the year 2000. So
Yeah.
a lot of changes in the world. But I could care less about the changes, but just ultimately of where I was going and where I was headed.
That was the biggest change. Yeah.
Biggest change. So 7th grade, I step off the bus and meet all the kids in the front of the school where all the kids, staged entry into the school. And I was wearing a sweater, and all of a sudden this older kid, he seemed like he was 10 feet tall at the time, just came and like rubbed his dirty hands on the back and the front of my sweater, and just feeling so alone there. I couldn't process how someone could do that. I was so well loved and well liked from where I'd moved from, and experiencing that 7th grade year, sitting alone by myself at lunches alone, getting food thrown at me, finding death threats in my locker, and just by me being there, it was as if every guy hated me and every girl liked just looking at me.
You were new meat.
New meat, and they knew, and word traveled fast that I'd come from the rival football school where I'd played football, and just more animosity on that, and really settling in. The only crowd that I fell into was similar to myself. There was 2 other boys that I became really close with, and they had also moved from different schools, and I'd fell into a friend group there, and eventually really found peace or felt safe in my friends. And with my dad working from 7 a.m. to almost 7 at night, I relied on friends moving forward. They were as if like my new family now, and friends' mothers and friends' parents were my new parents.
At that point, like, what was your relationship with your mom like?
Oh, it
See her
was
frequently, or?
no, it was I was so angry at her. I don't believe I spoke with her for some time, and I was just feeling so abandoned by her,
Right.
angry, frustrated. I just wanted her love, and I felt like she was so far away, and my dad really wasn't emotionally available. It's like the British thing where their parents, especially back in those days, weren't at all emotionally available.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's no love, like, no hugging, no telling you they love you. It's just, you get up every day, you go to work, you grind, you see your son, and you just give him a head nod, and that's the level of intimacy that's there.
That's right. My dad was born in 1943, and old school businessman. He was a high functioning alcoholic.
Yeah.
Um, he also, now looking back and having the perception that he did the best he could.
Right.
And he would try and connect with me, and I would just brush it off. We couldn't really connect at that point at all. And he, he would be there financially. He was there for the most part as he could be physically, but I really had ultimate freedom to do whatever I wanted to do. And with that much freedom at such a young age, with real no direction, or moving forward with the unresolved trauma of my mother's abandonment, that I felt. Just life moved for me, and I just didn't really care about anything. I was using the abandonment almost as like a heart, wearing it as a badge on my sleeve. Like, my mother abandoned me, my father's not really there. No one cares about me except for my friends. And I just navigating early adolescence, looking back now, I made a lot of choices that were just carefree, almost as like a F it
Right.
attitude. And, looking for validation in girls, looking for validation in sports, looking for validation in friends. Those kinds of thoughts and behaviors really carried in for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Um, no, yeah, obviously you've talked about your path of the poor choices that you made at that time to fill that void. There was alcohol, there was drugs, there was sex. What was kind of that first thing that you found escapism in?
I first found escape in smoking marijuana. Um, I just remember sitting in English class, and I knew that I had a joint waiting for me back home, and I could just go home and just smoke a joint and watch TV and forget about everything. And it eliminated, it filled that void in me where, love was non-existent, and the love for myself, I could just forget about everything once I smoked a joint.
Right.
And moving forward after that,
How old were you when you first started smoking?
I was 13,
13. So 7th, 8th grade.
7th grade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did you get your hands on the first time?
One of my original friends, his mother and father smoked marijuana and would give it to us.
Yeah. Not that it's hard to find it.
Yeah. 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 But, really no other children were experimenting with any kind of substances at that time.
Yeah.
And so I was, other kids knew that I was smoking marijuana, and, I was kind of, judged for that. And moving forward after that, I had found a girlfriend who was, really, well, that time, I think for a 13-year-old. And, I remember losing my virginity, 13, 14 years old. And it, that, having that relationship with her filled the void of, my mother not being there. It filled that void in so many different ways, that it allowed me to feel safe in that time.
Yeah.
And shortly thereafter, one of the most powerful experiences that I can remember was we were holding hands outside of the movie theater parking lot. Just watched a movie. It was like a matinee, and these kids drove by, and one of them screamed, "Hey, you fucking slut." And she just started bawling her eyes out because of all the judgment she was getting from other kids at school, because they knew we were sexually active, and probably from our parents. And I just remember walking over to that car, and out comes this kid who's twice my size, and he just starts throwing punches at me. And I just remember making the decision to fight back And with my hands clenched, I just threw punches, and it felt like I unleashed everything, all the pain and frustration into this kid. And all of a sudden he was on the ground crying and, pleading with me to stop. And in that moment, I had found an external power that I could use my hands to feel powerful and strong, and fight back for myself after the bullying and the shame and the pain. Everything was, I felt like I was in control then.
Yeah. And this was when you were 14, 13?
I'd say 14 now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Into 8th grade.
So now you've got sex and violence and weed as your escapism, as you're filling that God-sized hole in your heart.
Little did I know it was a God-sized hole.
Right.
No.
So then it's off to high school, which is a whole nother step up, because now you're walking into, not just, we went to a regional high school. So like my high school, when it kind of what you went to, was 4 different towns all coming together, 4 different complete personalities as well, all coming together from each town. And you also coming from Exeter, just everything kind of thrown in one big melting pot.
That's right.
To endure.
Yes. I was almost expelled from 8th grade. About 2 months before graduation, I was selling weed on school grounds. At 13, I got a job as a busboy. I wanted to work. I also found validation through work. My father went to work, and that's what I took from him. You go to work, making money is important. And so I was selling weed on the side, and about 2 months before 8th grade graduation, I sold a kid a bag of weed in the bathroom, and one of his best friends saw what happened and told the in-house police officer, and I was arrested for selling weed on school grounds. It's a felony plus a double felony for on school grounds. So going into my high school freshman year, I had met with the resource officer there. I'd met with the principal first thing in the morning to talk about, me being there and how this was important for me, because this was a second chance, because they did not expel me. And shortly thereafter, I'm walking down the hall with my friends, and all of a sudden I see a scuffle with one of my other friends. And then another guy just comes up to me and punches me right in the face. And at that moment, I just started bawling, because I thought that I was safe in my friend group. I thought that the bullying was over, and little did I know that it was only going to get worse.
Yeah. I mean, we all go through bullying, even me as like the jock, the popular kid. There was still kids that found their ways to bully. High school and middle school can be so detrimental to kids, especially people that are already dealing with so much from broken homes. And kids just don't know any better, and most of them are broken themselves, and that's why they're acting the way they are.
Yeah.
And it's hard, but we don't understand it at that point.
Not at that point.
We just think everybody hates us, and we don't realize that it's more their own shit than our own shit.
Yes.
But it compounds on our own shit.
That's right. And it only compounded so much. And, ultimately, still trying to process what had happened with my mother's abandonment, and now more feelings of not fitting in, not being good enough, loneliness. And before I went to high school, that girl that I had fell in love with, she had moved away, and it was one of the most traumatic memories that I feel like I had. She had left and I felt she had moved away, and I felt completely abandoned again and completely alone. Um, Without that love and validation of a romantic and sexual relationship.
Yeah.
Um, I was empty inside.
Yeah. So what was the next step from there? I know, alcohol came into life pretty soon.
Yeah. Um, Even in 8th grade, I was, my dad's house would be the place where all my friends get together and we would drink and smoke marijuana. And even in 8th grade, I was arrested at a school dance for drinking. Moving into high school, that summer, is when I'd first tried cocaine. And shortly thereafter, um, we were experimenting with freebase cocaine.
And what was that experience like?
It was powerful. It was short-lived. We'd only tried it, my friend's father would get us the cocaine, and after a few times, he had brought back freebase cocaine, and, you know, my friend was angry and crying and, how could you do this, Dad? And he was just an old Vietnam vet that was really messed up, especially getting your 14-year-old son's friends cocaine in the first place, and then, giving us freebase cocaine.
Yeah.
And even my friend's little brother at that age was 10 or 11, smoking freebase cocaine with us. Sad, very sad to think now both of those friends of mine are gone now, passed away from overdoses, about 6 years ago.
So you go through high school. It's just kind of this continuation that you mentioned of harassment and bullying, but also you leaning into violence and fighting and continued drug use. What was kind of throughout your high school experience? What was the worst experience you had to go through high school?
Well, there's a number of different experiences, but so I get settled into freshman year. At that time, a quarter of the Seabrook kids had dropped out within a few months.
That's where I'm from.
And I couldn't understand that or conceptualize that. But freshman year, there would be just like 2 fights every day, either in school or across the street in the Tuckfield Sports area parking lot. Just hundreds of kids there each day watching kids fight. And so that first day, I got punched in the face. Later on that day, there was a fight across the street, and we were all going over there, and there was that same kid. Like, I could see him, and I saw him coming at me, and I was like, oh God, not again. So he comes at me, punches me in the face again. I didn't cry then. I was just running away from him around this bush, saying, what the hell, man? What's going on? And then he walked away. But later on that night, like 2 senior girls came and picked me up with my good friend, and they said, I remember her turning around the front seat saying, we're going to take you to Shawnee and you're going to beat him up. And I was like, all right, I will do that. So I went to like Walmart and got a 10-ounce fish weight to put in my hand, and it fit just perfectly in my hand. And eventually we were outside of his house, and there he was with this white t-shirt running out of the house. He was like running like a rhino. And I knew that big overhand right was going to come at me again, just like the previous 2 times that day. So I ducked it and I punch him as hard and as fast as I could. And he was in the snowbank, pleading, please stop. I'm sorry. And again, I just felt so powerful. And that just carried on with more, with my head on a swivel. I was hyper vigilant and hyper focused. If anyone looked at me in an unfair way, or if anyone was trying to abuse me in any way, I knew that at that point that I could fight for myself, and I was willing to fight. And that carried on through freshman year, through sophomore year. And by sophomore year, I had a reputation known as a tough kid. And, that carried a certain amount of respect that I felt validated. And it was probably towards the end of my sophomore year, we were partying at my girlfriend's friend's house, and my friend was leaving to take his girlfriend home. And I remember him asking me, Brandon, do you want to come with me for this ride? And I said, no, I'll stay. So on his return back, he had flipped his car a couple houses down from where we were. And I heard the crash because I was upstairs alone. So I ran out to go see what it was. And it was his car. And it was upside down. And running up to the car, I saw him wedged between the earth and his car. And there was blood coming out of his nose. And I tried to wake him up and tried to pull him out, but he was just stuck. And after that, I felt like I ran away from that. I literally ran away. Once I heard sirens and neighbors were coming out, like, who are you? Who is this? And I just ran. And it felt like for the following years after that, I was just running. Fight or flight. I was either fighting or running away from anything.
What was the next deep dive that you went into after that as far as drugs?
Well, shortly thereafter, my MVP cheerleader girlfriend cheated on me with a handful of friends and acquaintances. And I just lost it at that point. I had lost friends. I had counted on these friends as like family, and I counted on my girlfriend for love and safety. And I took up back the only thing or another powerful thing to ease that discomfort, and that was more cocaine, alcohol, more marijuana. At that point, I gained a fuck it attitude, and trying to mend things with her. After that, we were driving to the beach after breakfast, and it was like it was snowing out, and we were driving like 20 miles per hour. We just passed my dad's condo on North Beach and going around a small turn, and my car just went into a tree. And I had looked over at her, and she said that she couldn't feel her legs, and she ended up breaking her back in a few different places. And they said that she was never going to walk again. And, at that point, she was flown to Boston for surgery. And I had gone to visit her, but shortly thereafter that relationship, it was her parents, ended it. And after that, um, I just ran faster.
Did they blame you for all this? Did she blame you for this?
Yes. And, I was driving. I wasn't driving fast. She was wearing her seatbelt. It's just such an unfortunate tragedy.
Yeah.
And finishing out that junior year, I started selling cocaine, more parties at my house. My dad's house condo was the place where everyone met up, and I would have parties. And, every weekend it was just naturally, an escape. And on top of that, every day was an escape from the trauma, pain, shame, guilt, frustration, everything from that moment on was just unmanageable, completely unmanageable. And senior year, I thought that a lot of friends of mine were joining the military, and I thought that would be a way to redeem myself. So I was looking forward to that. I was graduating early, getting my diploma through night school, and I just wanted to be out of school and try to find validation through serving my country.
Yeah, that's not long after 9/11 as well, right? So that kind of instilled kind of this patriotic thought in your head. Plus, your grandfather was a vet.
Highly decorated.
Yeah.
And, he mostly was promoted through the Battle of the Bulge. And I admired him so much. I didn't really know him because I was so young, but I thought that was going to be my saving grace.
Yeah.
And I was going to straighten my life out and find, like what the Marine Corps motto says, honor, courage, and commitment.
This story ends today, but yours is still waiting to be told. You're not alone in this walk in life. If this hits you, share it with someone that needs it. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Find me at Brad B. Rowe at Instagram. And if you're ready to step into the front row of your life, whether it be the fellowship, the foundry, coaching, or support the ministry, you can find it all at frontrow.co. I'll see you next week.